Morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Is Nicholas having breakfast? Somebody's having breakfast. I can hear you with a spoon and a bowl. Somebody's having their cereal. Taylor, do I owe you? I didn't write down who won. And so this weekend when I went to go do it, I wasn't sure. Is it you, Taylor?
It is me. I am the winner.
The winner. All right. Sorry, I did not send you anything because I wasn't 100% sure. I had
It's
Ryan
okay.
and Isaiah written down, so I didn't like circle the winner. So you will get something.
Okay.
Do you prefer Dunkin' or Starbucks?
Dunkin', definitely.
Dunkin'. She's a Dunkin' girl. I'm sure there's somebody who would beg to differ.
I'm sure there is, but I'm not that bougie.
You hear that? Them's fighting word, people.
Can you go away?
All right, we'll wait a couple more seconds. People are starting to come in. So today's lesson is heavy duty, so much information. I would recommend getting paper and pen, and I downloaded a form so that it would make it easier for you there's so much. I don't know how we can squeeze human development in an hour and 20 minutes. It's impossible. So we're gonna go kind of fast so we can get everything in. There's a lot of information. So we need to get cracking. I'll wait 2 more minutes to let people in, and then we will get started. Everybody did a good job on their logs and stuff. It was interesting to see. I need a nap after reading Amy's. Oh my God, Amy, you need way more sleep. Somebody else, I think it was my other class, didn't go to sleep before 4 a.m. on any given day. And I'm like, crazy. Crazy. All right. I am going to share my screen so that we can go to this week. All right, this week is human development. All right, so guys, we are in week 9, which is human development. Who remembers what week 10 is? Who remembers? Somebody tell me what week 10.
Don't we have to hand in the another article for the research paper?
Yes, you have to do the research paper on week 10. So I'm going to jump to week 10 just to give you a little heads up here, because I don't want you to squeeze it in 1 week. So welcome to week 10. which is only 6 days away. You did your first article for Psych Infonet in week 5. I told you you would need a second article that you'll do a research worksheet on, but I won't grade it. And then it is week 10. So you're going to do some quizzes about how to write a paper and how to do proper citation and a review of that article literature thing that you did. And then you have to put in your literature review paper. So use the writing center if you need more help. It is a 3-page paper about psychological research. So get a cracking on that now. Don't leave it to the last minute. Okay. The majority of you got points taken off because of APA format. Make sure you do your format correctly. So, I'm not going to go over anything more than that because this is what we will go over next week. This week is week 9. It is lifespan development. I downloaded just a JPEG of something that we're going to use today, but I wanted you to have it. And it has Piaget's information, it has Vygotsky's information, and it has Erik Erikson, which we're going to use. So that's what I loaded for you. You're going to do your study plan, you're going to do a quiz, and per usual, discussion. Discussion means you write a post, you write on 2 other people's posts, and then you come back and comment on your own. So make sure you're doing all the parts. Comprendo? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing this right now. I mean, we can go over, we'll go over it in the end. All right, I'm going to stop share. We're going to go to learning now. All right, so this week's chapter is on lifespan development. So when does your lifespan begin?
When you're born.
Before that.
Oh, when you conceived.
Yeah. Conception is when you are the beginning of your lifespan. Okay, so we're doing what's known as developmental psychology. It's called lifespan development. It's developmental psychology where we're seeing how behavior changes over the lifespan. So we're going to look at physical, which is fertilization to maturation, and maturation is when your body stops growing. So we're looking at lifespan physically from fertilization to maturation. We're looking at cognitive, which is thinking. The other word for cognition is thinking. Cognition equals thinking. I will write that down so that you write that down. Cognition equals thinking. So when we talk about cognitive development, it's everything to do with thinking. It's memory, it's problem solving, it's decision making, it's language, it's everything to do with that. Oh, let me let her in. Okay, so cognition equals thinking. And then we're also going to talk about like socio and emotional when you talk about your development. So we talk about a couple different debates in human development. Our first one is nature versus nurture. What's nature and what's nurture? What's nature?
Genes.
nature is your genetics, correct? And nurture is what?
Your environment.
Correct. So the first debate we're going to look at is nature versus nurture. Which one's more important when we talk about human development? Take a guess. Talking about human development, which one's more important?
Nurture.
Okay, so the environment. So you're not genetically proposed to be 6 feet tall.
I mean, I'm thinking about it from a philosophical standpoint.
Okay.
I like to think that in today's day and age, mentality plays a larger part than your physical being.
So if you were genetically proposed to be 6 feet tall, but you didn't get nutrients when you were young,
Yeah.
you would be stunted, so you wouldn't grow. So it's a trick question because it's psychology. So why would it be one answer? It's a trick question. Neither nature versus nurture is more important. They both equally play a role. So you are genetically prepared to be some way, but your environment could change it. So it is a trick question. They talk about like critical periods in human development. Who remembers in Twilight what happens with after Bella gives birth? Who remembers what happens with Jacob in Twilight? Who remembers that? Nobody remembers in Twilight. Bella gives birth to a baby vampire and they hand it to Jacob, who's a werewolf, right? And the reason that they hand it to Jacob is so that the baby will what's known as imprint with the werewolf so that they will form a bond right upon birth so that they won't hate each other. Okay. Now that is poetic license in a movie, but it is not wrong because babies do imprint. Babies, which is why they hand a newborn baby to a mother right away so that they can develop that bond. And that's why when a baby is going to be up for adoption, they don't hand the baby to the mother so that there is no imprinting with that mother. They would hand the baby to the adoptive parent so that that baby can imprint with that adoptive parent. So it is something that actually happens, imprinting. So there's many ways to study human development, but we're going to start at the very beginning of human development, and that is at fertilization. So there are 200 million sperm in one egg. And when that one sperm makes it through, woohoo, you have what's known as a zygote. Hopefully this is just a repeat of things you've learned in biology class before. So as soon as that sperm gets to that egg, it is considered a zygote. How many chromosomes does a baby have? They get a certain number from mom and a certain number from dad. How many chromosomes total?
23.
26.
23.
46 is correct. 23 from mom, 23 from dad. So 46 is the correct number of chromosomes. Those chromosomes are made up of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. It's the information that makes you up. That's what DNA is. We talk about genes. Genes, you have dominant and recessive. And what that is its characteristics. Again, I'm not going to go into a total biology lesson, but this is all got to do with human development. Without going into all the discussion about chromosomes and dominant and recessive, there's one chromosome that's very important. What is it? What's the important chromosome?
21,
The what?
the 21,
Not 21, 23rd. What's the 23rd?
oh, 23.
What is it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What's the 23rd pair determine?
Gender?
Correct. So, dad is the one who determines it. So mom always brings the X chromosome and dad determines whether it's a girl or a boy. If it's XX, what is it?
Female.
Yep. And if it's XY, it's a male. Now, do you know why they're X's and Y's? Does anybody have any idea why they use X's and Y's? Anyone? So if you looked in a microscope, that's what a chromosome would look like. It looks like X's and Y's. So they did not just randomly decide to make them X's and Y's. They actually look like X's and Y's, and that's why they use that. So dad always determines the sex of the baby. When after the zygotic period, it goes into what's known as the germinal stage. The germinal stage is from conception to the first week. And that's when the little ball of cells implant on the germinal wall. And then the term embryo starts at 2 weeks. An embryo is 2 to 8 weeks. The embryonic stage is when things start to form. The umbilical cord, which provides the nourishment to the baby. The organs start to form. Arms and legs and spinal cord and heart and brain and lungs all happen between 2 to 8 weeks. The baby's in that amniotic sac, which provides protection, and the placenta is what provides the oxygen and disposes of waste. FYI, your brain develops at day 18. That's how early your brain develops, day 18. At 9 weeks, you are considered a fetus at 9 weeks. 9 weeks is the fetal stage. From 9 to 40 weeks. When you start as a fetus, you are about the size of a pumpkin seed. And as we know, you grow to be a small watermelon. Your fetus is prone to many health factors. So, actually, from zygote right to fetus, you're prone to health factors. Prenatal care is super important. Mom's health is super important. Any substance that can cause a birth defect, this is important, is called a teratogen. Anything that can cause a birth defect is a teratogen. Who can name a teratogen?
Alcohol.
Alcohol. Alcohol can cause fetal alcohol syndrome. Fetal alcohol syndrome is when a child is born with actual deformities to the body. You can actually see a baby born with fetal alcohol syndrome. Their nose is wider. They often have webbed hands and feet, just like a duck. And their brain didn't form the same way. So they very often have learning disabilities and very often behavior problems. What else is another teratogen?
Cigarettes.
Drugs.
Yep. So let's do smoking. Let's do cigarette smoking. Smoking decreases oxygen to the baby. If you smoke, the baby is not getting the oxygen that they need. Now, you all know that cigarettes have carbon monoxide in them. So you are actually creating a carbon monoxide situation in utero, which doesn't have a little, detector that goes off and you run around and you say, it's silent, it's deadly, it's, you remember that? It's, what is it? Something, it's silent, it's deadly. What is it? What's the first one? I can't remember. Oh, well. Anyway, what does the word carcinogen mean? The word carcinogen means it causes what? What's a carcinogen? Causes what?
Causes cancer.
Correct. So the word carcinogen means cancer causing. We know cigarettes are carcinogens. So what you are now doing to your baby in utero is exposing them to cancer. They have a better chance of getting cancer now because you smoked while in utero. And besides the fact, I mean, just the common sense is that we know nicotine is a chemical. Why would you expose your baby to chemicals? You're exposing your baby to chemicals. So yes, smoking is a big time teratogen. Somebody else said drugs. So drugs, whatever drug you're going to take is going to affect a baby. So there are drugs that affect the heart. There are drugs that affect the lungs. There are drugs that affect the brain. They're all going to affect your baby. So
Some drugs as excuse me, like medicine also can affect the baby. Yeah.
yes.
formation.
So yes, over-the-counter medication falls under that category of drugs. If they sell it at a drugstore, it's a drug. So yes, even over-the-counter counts as well. So when we talk about drugs, we talk about maybe miscarrying a child, or if they're actually born, they could be stillborn, or they could have physical deformities, but no matter what, if the brain doesn't form the right way, then there's going to be some sort of learning or behavior problem. What's another teratogen that you can think of? Ladies, when you go to the dentist, what do they always ask you before they take an x-ray?
Yes, some treatment if you're pregnant.
Right. And so even though you say, hell no, that would be a miracle, what do they do?
Test.
What-
Pregnancy test.
What do they do?
Pregnancy test? No, not there. Right.
No, let's say you're at the dentist and they want to take x-rays. What do they put on you?
They protect you. They put something in your
They
like
put
in
on
your-
a lead right.
vest.
Yep,
thing.
a lead vest. Even though you say it would be a miracle, doesn't matter. They're not taking the chance. So they put a lead vest on you because what could harm a baby?
Radiation.
Right. Radiation is a teratogen. And so x-rays would radiate the baby and could cause birth defects. When new parents decide to buy a house, they usually have to buy a fixer-upper because they're in a situation in their life where they don't have a huge amount of money. What's a teratogen that could happen when you're buying a fixer-upper? What could you be exposed to, I should say? Yes, what did you say?
lead.
Correct. Lead paint. Lead is a teratogen. So when we're talking about the fixer-upper, you have pregnant mom, dad is sanding the walls. It turns out that it's a lead paint and it becomes fine particles. Mom breathes it in and can cause birth defects. So lead is a teratogen as well. So these babies, all of these babies that we're talking about can be born low birth weight, with learning difficulties, behavioral problems, physical problems. Now, So far, we've talked about both nature and nurture. When we talked about the stages of development, we were talking about nature, right? We were talking about your genetics, the embryonic stage, the fetal stage, that's all nature. When we talk about a teratogen, we're talking about nurture. That's the environment. That's the environment changing the baby's human development. If you are smoking, that is nurture. That is you changing the environment that that baby is born in, right? So nature and nurture working hand in hand. So I use the term low birth weight. Low birth weight is anybody who's born under 5.5 pounds. That's a low birth weight baby. Now, if you ask your grandmother what she was at when she was born, she'll probably say 4.8 pounds. And you'll be like, oh my God, you were such a low birth weight baby. And back then, that was a normal birth weight of, under 5 pounds was normal back then, but we supersize everything. And now if a 6 to 8 pounds is a normal baby, and there's 12 and there's 18-pound babies being born, which is humongous. I challenge you to carry around a 12-pound weight on your stomach and just see what it feels like all the time. So these babies are being born big. If so, a low birth weight baby is a baby that's born under 5.5 pounds. And if a baby is born at or before 36 weeks, it is considered a preterm baby. Now, does that mean that these under 5.5 and before 36-week babies are going to be disabled? Is that what it means?
No.
No, it does not. It is a way of just charting kids to make sure that they develop normally. It does not guarantee any sort of disability. So we're going to do a little exercise. I need everybody to turn on their cameras. It's okay. Look at my hair. Don't worry about it. Cameras on. We're going to do an exercise that's going to help you remember how you mature. You all mature, and you're going to do it with me. Everybody, come on. I'll wait. Come on, Roger, Hala. There's Alejandra, Ryan, Amy. Come on, Amy, Valerie. Let's see ya. There's Amy, Roger, Natalie. Come on. Kevin, Harpreet. Come on. All right. So you guys all mature from the head down, and that's called cephalocaudal. And you all mature from the inside out, and that's called proxima distal. So I need for you to stay with me. Let's do cephalocaudal, I want to hear you. Cephalocaudal, proximodistal. Proximodistal. Do it again. Cephalocaudal, proximodistal. Do it again. Cephalocaudal, proximodistal. Do it by yourselves.
Cephalocaudal.
Cephalocaudal, proximal distal.
Do it again.
Cephalocaudal, proximal distal.
Okay, let's write this down. You'll remember it this way. All right, give me a second. I'm writing it down. Okay. Cephalocaudal and proximodistal. Cephalocaudal, your first word, cephalocaudal, means the word cephalo means head. Cephalocaudal means head. So your cephalocaudal means you are maturing head down, okay? So that's, oh, Ryan's cam doesn't work, okay. So cephalocaudal means head down. When you look at a newborn baby, the first thing that they do is their neck gets strong. And then their trunk gets strong enough for them to sit up. And the last thing that they do is walk. Nobody walks before they sit up. It just doesn't happen. So you mature head down, proximodistal. You mature from the inside out. So your trunk gets strong long before your arms, your hands, or your fingers. Proximodistal is inside out. So you can actually see this with children if you're playing ball with them. Let's just say you're rolling a ball with them. When they first try to catch that ball, they don't have any coordination to get it. And eventually they're able to use all their arms and they're able to catch the ball. And eventually then they can learn to use their hands to catch the ball. And then the last thing to mature are their fingers. So when a child picks up a Cheerio for the first time, you should have a parade because it is a big developmental milestone. Now, the child most likely, once they pick up that Cheerio, they're not going to be able to get it in their mouth because they have no coordination. So you'll see a kid pick up a Cheerio and they'll try to get it in their mouth and they'll like miss. And that takes coordination until they can get it in their mouth. When a child can pick up food and put it in their mouth, it is a big deal, big deal, because their maturation has come full circle. So you all mature cephalocaudal and proximodistal, even in utero. In utero, your head matures. Remember, I said your brain matures at 18 days. It's going to mature before your legs. And same with your organs are the first things to form, right? That's inside. And eventually the arms and the hands and the fingers, they all eventually develop. But even in utero, cephalocaudal, proximodistal. So when you are thinking about it, give yourself a little dance there and you will remember. So you have now completed 40 weeks of pregnancy. Congratulations. You go to the hospital, you push, and you are the proud parent of a bouncing neonate. That's what you just gave birth to, a neonate. Hence the terminology, the neonatal unit. Your baby is born and put in the neonatal unit. It is a newborn, it's called a neonate. And that newborn is born with reflexes. Reflexes are automatic responses. And it is usually a motor behavior. And it is things that save their life. So they learn to search for food because it's life sustaining. I don't know if you've ever seen, if you threw a new, not that I'm recommending this, okay, there's my disclaimer, do not throw newborn babies into pools of water, but if you did, they would do a reflex of swimming. Nobody ever taught a newborn how to swim, but they do things that are life-saving. So they will actually swim to save their lives, even though they didn't know it. Again, not that I recommend that you do this, but if you went to a newborn, if you went to the hospital and went to the newborn unit, you could literally take a pen or a pencil, you could put it in the hand of a newborn and they will grasp around it. And you could then lift them up and they will hang from a pen. Because because of that reflex of holding on, they will hold on and not let go because it is life-saving. So they have these automatic reflexes, automatic responses that are life-saving. Do not do this. Do not go to your best friend who just had a baby and hang them from a pencil. And do not say your teacher told you to do that. That would be a problem. So not recommending it, but just telling you it could happen. Babies are born with a great sense of smell and hearing. Their vision is pretty bad. What did we say that vision, what was the best vision?
2020.
2020. And what does 2020 mean?
From distance, what you see in 20 feet.
Yep. So 2020 means something that is 20 feet away appears 20 feet away. Babies are born with 2,600. 2,600. So something that is 20 feet away appears 600 feet away. So do not go out and buy that $300 mobile that goes above your baby's bassinet, because guess what? They can't see it. They cannot see it. It takes 2 years for a baby's vision to get to where it needs to be. So these people that spend fortunes on things for babies to see, they can't see it. A baby can only see clearly about 8 to 10 inches, which is about how far it is when you're holding your baby to your face. That's why babies stare at you intently, because they can see your face when you're holding them, 8 to 10 inches away. It takes 2 years for their vision to get to where it needs to be. And genetics determines timetables. Some babies roll over quick and crawl sooner and walk sooner. Some people think that's fantastic. And then there's people, I think especially when you're on your second or third, and Amy, you can talk about, I think Evelyn, you're a mom, but there's nothing wrong with a blobby baby. A blobby baby that sits put where you put it, and you don't have to worry about them because they're not going to move, isn't a bad thing. So just saying, from experience, you want your baby to crawl and you want your baby to walk, but guess what? Your life is over when they do that. So there's nothing wrong with a blobby baby. Again, genetics is going to determine that timetable. There are milestones. They always happen in order. There's always going to be a crawling before a walking. There's never going to be walking before crawling. They all go in order. I know you, especially you people who are on here who are parents or caring for younger siblings. Some kids wake up and all of a sudden their shoes don't fit or their pants are too short. And you're like, oh my God, did you grow an inch overnight? Yes, they did. That is called a growth spurt. It is a true thing. And a child can grow an inch overnight and can grow a shoe size overnight. And that just speaks to the importance of sleep, as we discussed prior, because that's when your body is going to grow. So yes, it happens. Like yesterday these fit and yesterday they don't. And today they don't. They had a growth spurt. Let's talk a little bit about language. Your crying is the first language. Babies that cry have different cries for things. You know when a baby is mad. You know when a baby is in pain. You know when a baby is tired. They are able to communicate with their crying. And they've done extensive studies with parents and the crying, and a mother can actually pick out her own child's cry. In a screaming room of babies, they can actually hear their own child cry. So the first type of communication is crying. Around 2 to 3 months, they start to what's known as coo, C-O-O, cooing. And that is just vowel sounds when they're like just making vowel sounds. Around 4 to 6 months, they start to babble. Babble is when they add consonants. Now, based on the formation of their jaw, they always start with Baba, Gaga, and Dada, which is really sucky for mom because Dada's not even putting in the work, but they get the billing first. But that's just got to do with the muscles of the mouth firming. So even in other countries that might not even have the G sound in their alphabet, Baba, Gaga, and Dada are still going to be the first sounds that they babble with just because the muscles of the mouth form that way. Around 8 to 12 months, they have what's known as expressive language, which means they use one word to convey everything. So for instance, up is a whole sentence. Will you pick me up? It's one word, it's expressive. They can express everything they want. Milk. They're banging their cup on the refrigerator, milk. So that's called expressive language. Around 18 months, they use telegraphic speech, which is using two words with intonation. So for instance, using the same two words, but using some sort of intonation will be expressive in what the whole sentence means. Daddy go. Where did Daddy go? Same words. Daddy go. Daddy leave the room. So it's all about how they say it. And then, you know, around 2 years of age is when they get the vocabulary explosion. What's their favorite word at 2 years of age?
No.
It's definitely no.
Yes,
Definitely.
it is. Yep. And sometimes because no holds power, they sometimes say it just for power. So because it changes your behavior as a caregiver, a parent, a babysitter, whatever, sometimes they say it even when they don't mean it. So you might be offering them a cookie. Well, let's say you've offered them broccoli and salami and, you know, some smelly cheese. No, no, no. You offer them a cookie and they're on a roll and they're like, no, you know, do it because they're just in this role of changing behavior. So they very often do that. So do babies have more receptive language, which means they understand, or more expressive language, which means they talk? What do you think? More receptive or expressive?
Expressive.
Receptive. Babies understand so much that they can't express. Babies 100% get what's going on. They can read emotions. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where two people might be fighting in front of a baby and a baby just starts to cry. They understand the situation. That's why they say about, you know, parents that stayed together for the children to protect the children. Babies get it. Teens get it. Adolescents get it. Children understand. They understand this stuff. So it is very receptive. They get what's going on. They're just not able to express because the muscles in their mouth have not formed enough yet. So when we talk about language, we talk about nature versus nurture too, because you are genetically predisposed to talk. But if you are never exposed to language, how would you learn it? If you never talked to a baby, if you kept a baby in a bassinet and never talked to them, how are they learning language? They're going to be delayed, right? So again, nature versus nurture. They're naturally, you know, prededicated to getting the language, and then they won't get it if they're not exposed to it. So nature and nurture comes back a lot. Okay, cognitive development. Now, if we were in the class, we'd be watching a really boring movie, but I'd give you popcorn. So instead, we're going to talk about it. I put a copy of just a little typewritten thing about Piaget's cognitive development. I am going to share my screen and we're going to go to that. Hold on. Let's see. All right, let me go here. Share. Okay, we're just, see, it's on here. Do you see it? But I put it on your week 9, but I'm actually going to minimize and pull up a better copy so you can see it. If I can move you guys, there you are. Okay, I'm gonna pull up this PDF so that you can see it. Okay. All right, so we're gonna talk about some of the cognitive developments, and then we're gonna talk about personality development. So Jean Piaget developed the first theory on cognitive development. How did he do it? He studied his own children. He was this French, he was a French psychologist who studied birds, and then he started having kids, and he started realizing that his kids were doing things at the same exact time in development. So if he put his kid in a playpen, the playpens back then were just like wooden slats, and so he'd put like a stick outside of the playpen, and he would watch his children develop. Every child he would watch, and at around the same exact time they'd try to get the stick and they'd try to pull it in and they couldn't get it in. And then at a certain point in time, he watched his children turn it and bring it in. And he was like, wait a second, kids develop at the same rate. Each kid is different, but each kid develops at the same rate. So he came up with this theory of stages of cognitive development. So for the first thing I want to talk about are 2 words, assimilation and accommodation. That's it's A and B under 1. So assimilation, let me give you the definition. So the definition for assimilation is to use existing information to understand new knowledge. Assimilation is to use existing information to understand new knowledge. The definition of accommodation, which is a little bit different. They're very similar, but a little bit different. Accommodation is to use existing ideas to fit new demands. Use existing ideas to fit new demands. Okay. So let's go back to assimilation. Assimilation is when you use existing info to understand new knowledge. So you have a child who's sitting, oh, there's a kitty. You have a child who's sitting in their high chair, and you hand them an orange. Now, this child is a little boy that loves to play with his Fisher-Price basketball net and has a bowling set and has a pretend golf set. So if you put this orange in front of this child, what do you think they're going to do? Set, I couldn't hear. Say again. Play with it as if it's a what?
Ball.
Right. So you have to help this child assimilate the thought that this orange is actually food and not a ball. So you have to change their thinking. This is a understanding new knowledge situation, that this round thing that looks like all of their sports balls. Yeah, see, I'm very clear with what I say because I've made the mistake before when talking about this with the boy and his balls. So I've been very clear. We're talking about sports balls. So when we talk about the boy who plays with his sports balls, that we are talking about a new type of information, that this orange is food. That's assimilation. Accommodation is when you have existing ideas, but they all of a sudden have to fit new demands. Who saw the movie Elf?
Me.
Okay. So remember in Elf, when the book produce the book guy, who happens to be a small person, enters the room, and what does Buddy call him?
An elf.
An elf, because he's short, right? And elves are short. And this man takes such offense. Why are you calling me an elf? That is horrible and prejudiced, and you're awful. And Buddy's like, you're a small person, you're an elf. And he cannot conceptualize that anybody who is small cannot be an elf. So he doesn't have accommodation. Accommodation is when he would be able to understand that a small person could also be an adult book director or book whatever. You also find this with children with accommodation, that they just feel the taller you are, the older you are, because that's what they know. So this would fit into accommodation for them as well. Okay, so your 4 stages of cognitive development, according to Piaget. Your first stage is sensory motor stage. It's 0 to 2 years. And the big thing that happens, I mean, kids are amazing. 0 to 2 years is a really big deal. Piaget did not give it the credit it was due. He felt that it was sensory and motor and nothing else. He felt it wasn't really thinking. He said it had to be nonverbal. It was about action, not thought. It was all sensation. Kids put everything in their mouth, right? That's sensory. Kids bang things. That's all sensory. So that's what it's sensory motor. They're using their muscles to bang things. Now, object permanence is a big deal in this because why do you think peekaboo works for a child? So mom is here, mom goes away, mom comes back, child's like, yay! Oh no, where'd she go? She's gone. She's gone for, oh, she's back. Yay. Babies do not have object permanence, even though you can see 80% of my body behind my hands. To a baby, she's gone. She's gone. There's no object permanence. So if you took this marker and you showed it to a 1.5-year-old and you said, ooh, magic, they'd go, yay, you made the marker disappear, because they don't get that it doesn't exist when they can't see it. So that is a big deal. Once they reach object permanence around 2 years of age, they move to the pre-operational stage, which is 2 to 7 years. This is a time of symbolic thinking. The term school means the building that they go to. So mom says to Sue and Jane, come on, it's time to get ready. It's time to go to school. And Sue says, yay, I'm going to school. It's preschool. And Jane goes to elementary school. And Jane looks at Sue and says, you're not going to school. I'm going to school. Yours isn't a school. Mine is a school. Because they're very egocentric. So what does Jane think mom does when she drops her off at elementary school? She walks her into school, says goodbye. What does Jane think mom does all day? Think egocentric. What does she think?
Wait for her to come home?
Exactly. Jane literally thinks that mom is outside all day waiting for her, because what else could she possibly have to do during the day? The world rotates on her axis, so she's literally waiting outside. That's that egocentric thinking between ages 2 and 7. Now, this is a time when kids learn to pretend play, and this is a part of cognitive development. When a child can learn to pretend play, it is actually a form of intelligence. So that weird kid that you made fun of for having a fake friend was actually a very intelligent person. So pretend play equals intelligence. Moving on to the next step is concrete operational stages, which is 7 to 11. And you have two parts here, which is conservation. Conservation is that matter is unchanged with appearance. That's what conservation is. Matter is unchanged with appearance. So we're talking about weight, mass, volume. So that's if you gave a child, let's say you gave a 5-year-old 2 balls of clay, and you roll one out into a long snake, and you say, which one is bigger? They're going to 100% take the snake because it appears bigger, even though it knows it's the same exact ball of clay. It's not till you reach 7 to 11 years that you understand that it's unchanged with appearance. So that's the difference between like pouring the same cup of water into something that's low and big or tall and high. It's not till 7 to 11 that you'll know that's still 1 cup of water. And reversibility is basically A plus B equals B plus A. That's when you're able to do those math problems about reversibility. Formal operations, which is 11 and up, is, abstract thought, hypothetical thinking, which is, if then thinking. Using logic, deductive reasoning. These are all things that come after 11. Number 3 says Piaget today, current criticism of Piaget thought. He underestimated babies big time. Babies are cognitively developing between 0 to 2 years. He did not give them the credit. They really, 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 really learn during 0 to 2 years. So that's the criticism. Let's talk about another cognitive development, which is Vygotsky. Vygotsky, his thinking is that caregivers structure the learning environment. And we use the term caregiver because very often it's not mom or dad. Mom and dad get on a train at 6 a.m. Baby wakes up at 7 a.m. to nanny or caregiver or grandma, spends all day with nanny or caregiver grandma, and mom and dad get home at 7 o'clock to tuck baby into bed. They're not doing all of the cognitive structuring. The caregiver is. So we're using the term caregiver. So I'm going to go down to number 2 first. What do painters use scaffolding for? What do painters use scaffolding for? Nope. Does anybody know what scaffolding is? So when a painter needs to paint the roof or go up really high in a building, they go up in a scaffolding. What does that scaffolding provide for the painter?
Brush.
Say again. What does it provide? Starts with an S.
Support.
Support. Yep. So the term scaffolding in Vygotsky is very similar to scaffolding for a painter. It provides support. Scaffolding for a painter provides support so he can reach things he would normally not be able to reach. That is the same way that Vygotsky deals with cognitive development. Caregivers provide support. So when we talk about the zone of proximal development, we talk about the fact that the best way for your child to learn is in the zone of proximal development. A child is learning to tie their sneakers, okay? If you're not in the zone of proximal development, you might be in front of the zone of proximal development. So let's say that this is the zone of proximal development. So this is a zone of proximal development. If you're here, You might be a parent or a caregiver that says, you know what? I don't have time to teach you. Put on Velcro shoes. Or you might be in this zone and you might say, just let me tie your shoes. I don't have time. Let me just tie your shoes. Is a child ever going to learn to tie their shoes?
No.
They're not gonna. Same goes with, let's just talk about your multiplication tables. How'd you learn your multiplication tables?
By rehearsal.
How'd you learn them?
Repeating.
Yep,
and rehearsal.
repetition. You just had to go over them and over them.
Mhm.
So you're learning your multiplication tables. If you're not in the zone of proximal development, you might have somebody, a caregiver that says, you know what, let me just do your homework. Let me just do your homework for you. Or if you're over here, you might have somebody who's like, I don't have time to help you. Just learn it yourself. But if you're in the zone of proximal development, you have somebody who's going to do flashcards and test you and help you do it. So your child learns cognitively better when you're in the zone of proximal development. And that's what Vygotsky says. We support our kids and we help them through scaffolding. All right, let's see what's next. All right, before we go on to personality development, let's talk a little bit about attachment. Oh my God. All right, I'm gonna go over attachment really quickly because I realize what the time is and we still haven't even hit adolescence yet. We're just in childhood. We have to hit adolescence, adulthood, and death and dying. So we have a lot to do. So attachment, Harlow did an experiment with wire monkeys. It was always thought that children attach to whoever feeds them, and they proved that wrong. So they did an experiment with wire monkeys, and they had 2 wire monkeys with baby monkeys that both fed them. And then they had 1 wire monkey that had a soft cloth on the outside of the wire, and the baby monkeys gravitated to the monkey that was covered in soft. So they realized that contact comfort is super important to creating attachment. So we'll keep moving on. I won't go over temperament. All right, we'll go over these 8 stages of Erickson really quickly. This is about personality, that in every stage there is a psychosocial dilemma. A psychosocial dilemma means there is some sort of conflict between something personal and something social. So in your first year of life, trust versus mistrust is, if you have a good relationship with your caregiver, it is the difference between a secure environment versus an insecure environment. That's what the trust versus mistrust is. Or is it an enriched environment or is it a deprived environment in the first year of life? The second stage is 1 to 3 years, autonomy versus shame and doubt. In this case, autonomy means independence. Now, if you think about 1 to 3 years, just to give you parameters, potty training is huge. And so when a child does potty train, they feel very independent. They feel very autonomous. When they have an accident, they often feel shame and doubt. Stage 3 is initiative versus guilt. Initiative meaning learning to go for it. So let's just use the example of learning to ride a bike. Between 3 and 5 years, 3 and 6 years, you're learning to learn how to ride a bike. So you start going for it, you're doing really well, you took the initiative, and then you are unsuccessful and you don't feel great. Stage 4, ages 6 to, we use the term puberty, this says 6 to 12, but 6 to puberty, industry versus inferiority. The term industry means productive behavior. That's what the term industry means. Productive behavior. So are you productive or do you feel bad? This is a time when teachers use things like gold stars. And when you get 5 gold stars, you get to go to the treasure box on Friday because it works. You want them to be productive. And if they're not productive, then they don't feel good. So it's a psychological trick on teachers' parts to pin you against your classmates so that you get trips to the prize box. So gold stars work all the time. Stage 5, adolescence, identity versus role confusion. Basically, this is the question of who am I? Do you perceive somebody as being cool and popular, and do you dress like them, or do you try and figure out who you are? That's identity versus role confusion. Stage 6 is young adulthood. Intimacy versus isolation is not about sex. Intimacy means having relationships with others. So again, think about this. This is when you go away, maybe to college, or you're moving to a new place for a job. And do you feel like you have good relationships? If you move away for a job, but you still have a strong core of friends where you grew up, you will feel like you have friends. You won't feel isolated. Stage 7, middle adulthood, is generativity versus stagnation. The term stagnation is stuck. So do you do something to help others and maybe guide the next generation, or do you feel stuck in your life? Like, why the heck am I 50 years old and I have nothing to show for it? Stage 8 is the end of life, and it's integrity versus despair. And that is, do you have acceptance and satisfaction for your life, or do you have remorse for the way your life went? That's at the end of your life. So these are Erik Erikson's stages. If we were in class, you'd be in groups and I'd be having you act them out. So maybe you should be thankful that we're not in class right now. Let's move on to adolescence. Adolescence is the period between late childhood and early adulthood. We talk about puberty. There's a whole thing to do with nature versus nurture for puberty. There's a secular trend right now for girls. Girls always mature before boys, and girls right now are maturing at around 12 years of age. Well, even earlier, some at 10, 4th grade, which is crazy because cognitively they're not prepared that they could have a baby. And in 4th grade, you're not cognitively prepared, but now all of a sudden your brain is prepared. So cognitively, your brain is not adult, but your body is. Adolescence is a time of impulsivity, not necessarily thinking about consequences. We have a tendency to believe that kids, adolescents are tumultuous and combative. And in actuality, they are just quite smart. Adolescents are able to figure out what their parents are going to say, so they have an answer back, which is a sign of smart, which often ends in, you can't go because I said so, because the kids can think one step ahead. So it seems like a time of turmoil, but adolescence is not a time of turmoil. Is a time, well, I shouldn't say this. In thinking, it's not a time of turmoil or contentiousness. It's a time of smart, but there is a ton of bullying. 88% of people have witnessed bullying on social media. But social media does have some positives because it allows people who have a tough time fitting in to find a place that they can fit in. But it is a haven for bullying. We talk about moral development at adolescence because this is a time when you realize with moral development that laws and things are for your protection, but they can be changed. So you'll learn a little bit more about moral development in your chapter. How many people in this class are 18 years of age? Say out loud that you're over 18. 18 or over.
Me.
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 Only about 6 of you?
Me.
Okay, who else?
Me.
Okay. Anybody else?
Me.
Okay, we're still going. Maybe, okay. There's a lot of people not answering. I'm going to assume that the majority of these people on this screen are 18 and above. Okay, I'm just going to go with the whim on this. How many of you people that are over 18 are 100% independent? You don't live at home. Your parents don't pay for your car. Your parents don't pay for your phone. You're paying for college by yourself. How many of you are 100% independent?
I am.
Amy. I figured Amy. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. That is why we don't use the term adults at 18 years of age. We use the term emerging adulthood between 18 and 21 because the norm is that it's actually 18 to 25. The majority of people 18 to 25 years old are not independent. Therefore, you're not truly adults. People are getting married later. They live at home longer. They're financially dependent on others in their lives. And so they are not true adults. So now 18 to 25 is termed emerging adulthood. And then adulthood starts in your middle 20s. And it gets broken into 3 phases of adulthood. You have early, middle, and late. In early adulthood, which is basically your 20s and your 30s, it is the height of your physical being. So your senses are the best, your muscles are the best, your heart is the best. Of course, nature versus nurture. If you abuse your body, if you do a lot of drugs and smoking and things like that, your body is going to degenerate quicker. But your cognitive ability is really great at that point. When you hit middle adulthood, which is your 40s to your mid 60s, things start to go downhill. Your skin loses elasticity, your hair changes, it turns gray, it could fall out. Your hearing is not great, your eyesight changes, your bones change. That's where osteoporosis comes into play, and you can physically shrink. You become shorter, you shrink. So again, nature versus nurture. Things like exercise can slow some of these processes. The exercise is good for your body. You've heard the term menopause for women who stop being able to reproduce. There's also a menopause. People don't talk about menopause, but for guys, their testosterone levels go down and their sperm counts go down. So they always talk about the women, they don't talk about the men, but men have a menopause the way women have a menopause. And in the late parts of adulthood, which is over 65 years of age, the hearing is at, remember I said to you, about 65%. Your reaction time is down, your memory deteriorates. your eyes change. You ever heard of night blindness? That's where the eyes don't contract and open. So they have this period of night blindness. The one thing that's really interesting is that I think I told you, you get happier as you get older. So happiness increases with age. Nowadays, thanks to Viagra, those nursing homes and old age places are little havens for sex. The little bunny ranches that are going on. Women always outlive men. Right now, the average age for a woman is 81 and a man's average age is 76. The women do outlive men. As you get older, you get smarter. Okay. The thing is, you're always accumulating knowledge over time. The problem is that sometimes it's harder to get that from your memory to when you want to say it. So that's why you wake up in the middle of the night as an adult and you remembered something you were trying to think of earlier in the day, because it just takes longer to get from point A to point B. So you always accumulate knowledge. You always are getting smarter, but sometimes you have a hard time with problem solving. So I'll never forget my grandmother, when we got our first microwave, we put a baked potato in the microwave and pressed it for 6 minutes and it came out cooked. And my grandmother swore it was the work of the devil, because she could not rationalize how a potato could cook in 6 minutes. It had to be the work of the devil. Now, you can't go into a conversation with your grandmother about ions because they're just not going to get it. So she had a hard time understanding certain concepts, but she never stopped getting smarter. It's just a slower time. And the more you use it, you won't lose it. So it's a use it or lose it situation. People that are playing brain games all the time are just getting smarter and smarter. If you sat in front of the boob tube and watch Maury Povich, you're not getting smarter. It's not happening. So we only have a couple more minutes. There are a couple parenting styles. The best type of parenting styles is an authoritative parent. An authoritative parent is a parent who enforces rules, but is very caring. An authoritative is enforcing limits with open communication. A child that is raised in an authoritative household is going to have good self-esteem, is going to be responsible. It's a warm, supportive environment. They do well in school. They become self-reliant. What would be an authoritarian household? What's an authoritarian household? What's an authoritarian household like? Hello? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? An authoritarian household is with rigid rule and obedience to authority. Because I said so. So kids that grow up in an authoritarian house all the time. Now, every parent can be authoritative and authoritarian at a certain time, but we're talking about 99% of the time they're in an authoritarian household with this rigid rule, is actually going to be withdrawn and anxious and unhappy, and they don't do as well in school. You have permissive parents, which have few rules and they're, nothing's accountable. They're actually kids who grow up with a permissive household are the ones that get in trouble. They get into deviant behavior. And as they grow up, they actually become dependent adults. They're looking for what they didn't have. So we're going to end off in the last, minute with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of death and dying. So I'm going to write them real quick for you on here, and we'll go over them. To anger. Okay. So these are your 5 stages of death and dying. Your 5 stages of death and dying according to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. The first stage is denial, shock, and disbelief. Now, again, this is about death and dying. So it could be about a death that could be, you know, a car accident where somebody dies, or this could be somebody getting a terminal diagnosis. So the first step would be denial, shock, disbelief. Oh, the lab must have done my results wrong. Oh, this doctor is a jerk. I'm going to get a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth and a 7th opinion. Just absolutely not believing it. Your second stage is anger, really mad. Oh my God, you know, I hate my best friend from 3rd grade who gave me my first cigarette, and now I have lung cancer. Or I want to sue. I'm so mad at these people that were in the car accident that killed my aunt. You know, just real anger. Or maybe angry at whatever your belief system is, God or Muhammad or whomever. Really angry that this came to pass. Your third stage, bargaining and guilt. Well, if I go to church every Sunday from this point forward, maybe I'll beat this cancer. Or, you know, I wasn't a good enough parent, so that's why I have this. Stage 4, depression. I think that speaks for itself. Stage 5, acceptance. Where do people get stuck? Where do the majority of people get stuck?
Depression.
Yep. So it takes a lot to get to acceptance. A lot to get to acceptance. The majority of people get stuck in depression, whether it is about a death that is occur or a death that is looming ahead. A majority of people get stuck in depression, and it takes a lot to get to acceptance. And you've heard the phrase, time heals all wounds. Very often it takes a very long amount of time, and you never forget, but it actually desensitizes a little bit when you're talking about death. It's a horrible, horrible thing, but time does heal wounds. When we talk about depression, you know, we're coming from a point of psychology. Get help. Don't go it alone. Get the help you need. So this is the end of our class. You guys have a discussion post for this week. So you have to do the 3 parts. You have to write about, you're actually writing about yourself in one of these stages that we talked about. That's what the post is about. Then you're going to write on 2 other people's posts, and then you're going to come back and answer somebody who wrote on your post. If nobody writes on your post, then you should still illustrate and, you know, write more about what you're talking about. So it's actually, this discussion post is about you guys. So I look forward to hearing a little bit more about you. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we've done today or what you have to do with discussion? And then again, make sure you get that second article for next week. Any questions? If not, have a good week. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Hi, Professor.
Hi, Professor. Bye, Professor. Bye.
Bye. All right, I'm turning it off. Bye, guys.